The Douglas Coleman Show is made possible with support from Seth David Radwell, a recent guest on the program and author of American Schism, How the Two Enlightenments Hold the Secret to Healing Our Nation, released this past July. As Publishers Weekly writes in its recent glowing book life review of American Schism, business executive Radwell's epic debut examines the historical influences that have led to what he sees as the collapse of politics in the United States. Seth Radwell makes the case that the current chasm between the American right and left can be traced back to the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and the basic tenets of liberty, equality, and reason. American Schism provides a historical perspective that can help us fight today's unreason with reason and bridge current-day divides. American Schism by Seth David Radwell is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. For more information, go to americanschismbook.com.
It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Bruce Olav Solheim. Hey, Bruce, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So this is your third time on the show. I actually looked that up.
Yeah,
so
that sounds right.
I think we're going to have to label this one two, because the first one you were on, I think you were paired with somebody, and we can't have duplicate titles.
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube doesn't like that.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back talking to you. I do know we have a lot of stuff to talk about. We have a lot of mutual interests. And if I remember correctly, music is one of them, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Musician, you're a musician. I'm a musician. You're a much more experienced musician than me, but, I've been doing it for a long time. But
what do you play?
I plateaued many years ago.
I forget what you play.
I play rhythm guitar in our band. We have at the college, we have a bunch of guys affiliated with the college that formed a band about 20 years ago. So I've been playing rhythm guitar, writing songs. Oh, okay. And actually, we just recorded a song too, so that's pretty cool. And
what?
Even though we're all like 50s, 60s, whatever,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We just had a great time in the recording studio. It was a really nice recording studio too. So we kind of had fun, and our keyboard player got to play a Hammond B3 organ, which just blew everybody away. That thing is so loud.
Well, if your rhythm guitar is not amplified, that Hammond is going to drown you right out.
Yeah, they had the two rhythm guitarists and the keyboard guy in the same room, and then they had everybody else isolated, the drummer, the bassist, and the lead singer, lead guitarist. But no, they had us amplified. I was playing through a Vox. It was nice.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I don't have a Vox, but I like playing. I have a Rickenbacker guitar, so it sounds nice in that Vox.
Oh, Vox amps are great. Yeah, they sound fantastic. Is it a tubed one? Is it the old style?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't an AC30; it was an AC15. But still, that's plenty loud. Those tube, even if they're only 15 watt, man, they can scream.
Yeah, they have a very sweet sound too. Not thin. It's a very fat sound with the tube.
Yes. Yeah, the tube that gives it that warmth, that overdriven warmth, and it just sounds so much different than I've done the processing or whatever you call them, digital amps, and it sounds cool. You get a lot of different sounds, but it's just not as it's not that organic feel to it.
No. So what kind of music do you do? I mean, what's your genre?
We do 60s, 70s influenced rock, and we also get into some country kind of rock, and we do some kind of eclectic stuff that borders on jazz sometimes, which is kind of fun. So we just have so many different interests, and they all come together. All six of us have different influences, and we all get along really well. And so yeah, it's just I'd kind of classify us like that, just our age group, 50s and 60s. Actually, our keyboardist, he's only in his 30s, so he just does whatever we tell him to do.
Oh, yeah.
We boss him around. No, I'm just kidding. He's a good guy. We call him the kid, though.
If you've got a B3 and you guys are in that age group, then I would say Allman Brothers is the first one that comes to mind for me.
That was kind of the vibe that we got with this latest song. I would say it kind of evolved. I wrote the song in 2011, and it kind of sounded like a Stones song when it first came out. That's not how I was trying to get it to be, but just, how when everybody gets together, that's kind of what it sounds like now. I didn't imagine that when I wrote it, but now it's more has an Allman Brothers vibe too. Yes, especially with the Hammond B3, you got the the ghost of Greg Allman in there.
Yeah. Okay, so last time you were on, we had mentioned I think Allie's Bees. Have you done more productions of that?
We have not, but we are doing, the theater people are still working, but we're doing a animated thing, which is kind of interesting. It's still online, and we're basing it off one of my comic books, the Snark 1, and Snark is a alien-human hybrid who comes to Earth and has adventures. And anyway, we got the actors together, and we're putting together an animated. It'll be like a short series, we'll do it online, and it won't be live like our theater, but we're using the theater actors, so they get to do some voice acting.
Oh, is Stagger Lee going to be part of that?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
he is. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember, I think he is Snark.
Oh, great.
So he's the lead character.
Oh,
yeah.
Super. Where did you find him anyways?
He was a friend of one of our, Rochelle was in a couple of our productions. She's this young aspiring actress in L.A., and that was one of her friends that she's run into in L.A., although he's from Seattle originally. And that's how I got introduced to him, and we hit it off right away, and he's been in a couple of things we've done, and he's just great. I don't think there's any limit to his talent. Every time I think, man, that is really good, what else and then he does something else remarkable. So very talented young man.
I was really blown away by his performance in Allie's Bees, and then when he came on the show, we talked. I mean, we couldn't shut up because we were just talking and going off on tangents, and I mean, we ran the full hour of the show, and I've been watching the stuff that he's putting up on Instagram, and he does the most amazing little videos, and they're wonderful. Yeah. And I'm assuming he's producing all of this stuff himself, and he's like a one-man band, this guy.
Yeah, he's got I think he's originally from Seattle. He was a monorail driver, which there aren't too many of those people in the world, so he's very interesting. And then he's very eclectic. He's he's a young man, but he's an old soul because he collects vintage stuff, and so he you can talk to him about anything. It's like he has, even though he doesn't live that long, he's got like all this. I don't know. He's tapped into the great unconsciousness or whatever. That he's able to appreciate all this vintage stuff is like he's living in those eras.
Well,
so that makes him a great actor.
All you got to do is look at his hair, and that he's some kind of a reincarnated 1950s person.
He's got the pompadour, I think they call it, right?
Yeah. Looks like he came right out of American Graffiti.
I know. He just needs the what those rolled up jeans and the T-shirt rolled up with the cigarette pack in it. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So, when is this going to come out? The animated?
I would say probably in a month or so, because our technical wizard, Jordan Martin, made a move from Seattle, or actually Tacoma, Washington, down to Florida. So that's about as far as you can go, from the extreme northwest to the extreme southeast. And he's settled in now, so we're kind of on hiatus there until he got everything set up, all his equipment set up. So now I think we're okay. I think we got maybe one more actor to record to fit in, and then we'll be able to start releasing some of the way I wrote the comic was all the comic stories are all like standalone, well, not totally standalone, but kind of standalone 4 or 5 pages. So we're going to do these will be like 4 or 5 minute little vignettes that we'll release, animated vignettes. And we use the original art from Gary Dumm, my artist, and then somehow Jordan animates it. I'm not sure how he does it. And then of course we got the wonderful voice actors with it. So it should be a lot of fun.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And that seems to be the kind of thing. People release a lot of short things,
Yeah.
Whether it's YouTube or, whatever.
Well, you know why? Because the attention span of modern man has shrunk significantly thanks to the internet. And I mean, even when we started my video show a little over a year ago, my producer and we talked about that. And, first I was going to run a half an hour show. And he said, no, he said, I wouldn't do it. He said, the 15 minutes seems to be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so we cut the show down to a 15-minute show, and it's doing well. I have a feeling if we had done half an hour, we wouldn't see the kind of response that we're getting. And actually, even shorter than that, depending on what it is. But a lot of these like cooking shows and sort of little mini Martha Stewart type things that I see a lot of on YouTube, they're 4, 5, 6 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
And they're getting millions of views.
Yeah, like an album cut. Like I guess, just a pop song cut, about that time. Yeah.
So anything longer, I mean, how long do you plan on having your animated run in segments?
Well, we got lots of material. So we got, each little 5-6 minute thing, there's like, I think 6 stories in the first Snark, and then we got Snark 2, which has another 16 stories. So yeah, we could do this for a while. And I've just written, although it hasn't been illustrated yet, Snark 3. And then I got another comic book that's more complete. It's actually going to come out early next year with a different artist, a young girl. She's only 19 years old, and she's from Poland. And don't ask me how I found her. I can't remember. I think it was Instagram. I was looking at something. All of a sudden, I saw this art that just popped out at me, and I go, "Who is this person?" I was shocked that she was only 19 because she's kind of like a visual artist version of Stagger Lee, an old soul, but a young person.
Yeah.
And she would be kind of cool for people to interview because she's there's a lot of interesting things going on in Poland. But anyway, she is something, and she, by the time, in 10 years or something, I think she's going to be a really big deal. And I'm glad that I caught her now when her prices aren't astronomical.
Well, she's still available. Yeah, exactly.
When she's available, yeah, exactly. And wants to work with some old dude.
So
but no, she's really nice.
So before we got on, you mentioned the name Demi Lovato. What was that all about? She interviewed you, or you were on her show, or what was the story?
Yeah, it's called Unidentified, which I think was another show that they did a year ago with I don't know. I think it was the Blink 182 guy did some show, but anyway, I guess they just used the same titles over and over. But it was starring Demi Lovato, and I was asked to take part in it, and I was interviewed not by her, but by some of the producers there. And we were part of an experiencer group that they filmed her kind of walking into this UFO experiencer group. And they had a leader who was this lady from San Francisco named Lori. I can't remember her last name, but anyway, she was leading this experiencer group, and she does hypnotic regressions and stuff, but which she did with Demi Lovato in this show. But so anyway, the main thrust of the episode 1 that I was in was that she walks into this, and we start talking about our experiences, and she's trying to relate her experience and learn about what it means, because she's just recently had an experience out in I think Joshua Tree out in the desert out here in California. And it was kind of an interesting experience. They did some interviews with us, the producer. Like I said, there's like 6 of us, and we all did individual interviews, and I thought, oh man, this is cool, it's going to be in the show. They cut all that out, and they only had us in the background kind of, and and one or two people, who were around Demi got to say something, but that's the way, that's the way Hollywood is. And actually the producer was very nice. He emailed me and not just me, but the 5 others as well, and said, "I'm really sorry your parts got cut out, but we, so I mean, he didn't have to do that." So I thought that was pretty nice. So, I don't think most of those guys would bother to email you and say sorry that you didn't make the cut, but
no, probably not.
But I thought that was kind of nice. So, and he's actually the guy who got me the other gig for this other show where I was actually interviewed, and that was Alien Encounters Declassified, which was on the Travel Channel. The Demi Lovato thing was on Peacock, which I guess is a new streaming service. Geez, how many streaming services are there now? I can't keep track of them.
Oh, I have
and if
no
you
idea.
subscribe to all
Thousands.
of them, it's like a mint, to try to subscribe to all of these things. But it was on Peacock. But this Alien Encounters Declassified was on the Travel Channel beginning of September. And I actually had, like a full interview on there. It was pretty cool. And it was a kind of a smaller production, because like when I went there was just like maybe 10 people that were part of the production crew, and they, their cameras, and I think they had 2 cameras. And the thing with Demi Lovato, I mean, when I drove in there were like big trailers everywhere and like 100 people wandering around, and it was as soon as I got there, I knew this is a big deal. And it's because when you bring in somebody well known, that's what happens.
Oh, well, they got to have their trailer. I mean,
they got to have the trailer. But she's really nice. Her sister was with her and her best friend, and they were all very nice. They seemed very nice and down to earth. But what was weird to me, the experience, was that not how they acted, but how other people act when they come in the room. That was the weird thing, people are just talking. We're all talking together. And as soon as the quote unquote talent comes in, it's like they all get weird. I don't even know how to explain it. They all like change their personalities or something. It's like I guess it's their big break, right? Maybe that's what they think they're somehow gonna.
Let me see if I'm interpreting this right. They go from normal to kiss ass.
Yes, and also this kind of, they're so aware of their image, and they want to say something that's so important, and they have to like override other people to say it, and talk over people. And I'm thinking, I'm just me, like you and I are talking. That if somebody wants to talk, I'll let them talk. I'm not going to like try to interrupt. But man, everybody was trying to get, not everybody, but a number of the people just kind of dominated and tried to get her attention, So that was kind of interesting. I didn't. I guess I should have expected that, but she herself was very, very nice. So
I think I would have used the word pathetic rather than interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to be unkind, and I understand that. I got a day job, so I don't know. Some of these people think, well, maybe it's their big break. Now they can finally, And I'm just thinking, hey, this is I do this too, because I'm interested in it, sincerely interested and like talking about this stuff and being involved, but it's not my bread and butter,
Well, and I think, and don't take this the wrong way, but I think you're old enough to know better.
Maybe so, although there were some people around my age who acted that way too. So
they haven't learned anything yet. Yeah.
What's that saying? No fool like an old fool.
No fool like an old fool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good one. Well, what's really weird about that whole mentality is that it doesn't usually work. If somebody is going to be impressed by you, they're going to be impressed by what you're doing, what you've created, and who you are, not who you can be.
Yes.
And it's, I just find that whole thing bizarre. I mean, I get it when kids are 17, 18 years old, but, if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're still doing that, and you haven't got anywhere yet, then maybe you ought to take a look in the mirror and try a different approach.
It's it's like everybody here in Southern California. They all got they got a script. They're just waiting to meet somebody so they can hand them the script. Kind of a thing. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. And back to your other point about the shorter attention span, I was listening to, I think Bill Maher was being interviewed by Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan show. And they were talking about, they said either the attention span is 5 minutes or it's 3 hours. One or the other. There's nothing in between.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting observation,
Although the 3 hours tends to be political stuff on.
Yes.
Yeah. Where people will dissect one issue forever and ever, and depending on which side of the political aisle you're on, it's just disgusting. It's so toxic. I intentionally stay away from all of that because there's so many of these, angry political rant shows on. And that was one thing I said, I'm going to offer an alternative to that, and I'm going to do not that. I'm going to take a cue from the master Johnny Carson, who stayed away from all of that on his show. He made fun of both sides, and it was very funny. He was very shrewd the way he did it, because you never could figure out his politics based on his monologue. And that was the way you do it. That was smart.
Yeah, he didn't want to alienate people. He didn't want to get into
where
you have to advocate for one side, even though you don't totally believe it. You're forced into a box, And I mean, that's the way I grew up with my parents. They voted for whoever they thought was the best person. I mean, my dad was in a union, so, they kind of favored, I guess, the Democrats, but they voted for Republicans too, and they were very open-minded. And so the Norwegians tend to be very diplomatic, so they kind of grew up with that, which I think is the best way to be, because they never discussed politics with their friends and, parties and stuff. They just were very careful about that, because it can get ugly. So, and that was in the 60s, but now, I mean, that was tumultuous enough, but now it seems to be even worse.
Well, the 60s had issues that were, I think, a little more genuine. Mm-hmm. Not that we don't have serious issues now, but I think a lot of these issues that we have now are self-inflicted and self-created. Where the 60s, we had the Vietnam War going on, civil rights. I mean, real hardcore issues that
literally life and death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a shame, because everything becomes nationalized. Even a local issue becomes a national issue, right. and then supersedes some other thing that we haven't solved, and it just goes from one extreme, one soundbite to the next, and meanwhile, we're not doing anything.
Well, I suppose in all fairness, too, all of this instant social media isn't helping. In fact, it's just compounded the problem tenfold. Where in the 60s you had Walter Cronkite, and that was about it. So everybody was at least in tune with what the information they were receiving. Whether they agreed or disagreed or had different opinions about what they were seeing, that's up to them. But now your opinion is sort of dictated for you or at you, depending on which news outlet, and I use that term loosely, you watch. So you tune into the one that agrees with you and keeps you in your little echo chamber. And I hate that.
You're right. I mean, there wasn't the 24-hour news cycle, so they didn't have to manufacture discontent or discontented people. They had the hour, and that's when you got it, and then you went on with your life. You read the newspaper in the morning and the hour of news at night, and my dad always did. So that was it.
And concentrate on important things like your family and your friends. And
yes.
Let me ask you a really off-the-wall question here. Mm-hmm. What is the big difference between the Norwegians and the Swedes?
It used to be, the way it is now is different than it was. It used to be that the Swedes were always like the big brother and the Norwegians were the little brother. They're a smaller country, fewer people. The Swedes have a lot more people. And actually Norway was part of Sweden for a while until they got their independence, and then they got their own constitution, and they got totally independent. Norway did in 1905 from Sweden, so they had that kind of big brother little brother relationship, and so they always, and Sweden was neutral in World War II. Norwegians, of course, were occupied by the Nazis, and my mom and dad were trapped there during that time. But so there was a little bit of animosity. although the Swedes did actually help the Norwegian resistance. But nowadays, which is interesting, Norway is now all of a sudden the big brother, even though they were the little brother, because of oil money. I mean, they got so much money, and the Swedes. So now you have Swedes coming to Norway to work, as domestics and doing all this. It's like they're kind of like humbled a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so the Norwegians are like, that's why they call them the blue-eyed Arabs. I mean, they got lots of oil money, so which the Swedes don't have. They have more traditional economy.
So both countries have their own royal families at this point?
Yes, they do, and they're they're really and there's a lot of teasing going on, but I'm 1/8 Swedish. My grandmother on my mother's side was Swedish, but everybody else is Norwegian. So there's they both are constitutional monarchies, with social democratic. They're very close in that respect. The Norwegians tend to be a little bit more conservative than the Swedes. Not conservative as us. When you look at all of Europe, their conservatives are still, by our standards, liberals. Because their whole political spectrum is that direction because they're social democracies. But they tend to be a little bit more conservative than the Swedes, and kind of in some ways iconoclastic. They don't belong to the EU. They kind of are independent. The Norwegians are. So there's a little bit of that going on too. And the further north you go, it's the people are very different than the southern part of Norway. They're much more provincial up north than they are in the southern, Oslo, the capital city. That's where all the immigrants from Africa and the Middle East are in Oslo, in kind of in not ethnic ghetto. Well, you could almost say ethnic ghettos. They've actually, it's kind of happened there in the south.
Well, isn't in the north of Norway, that's where the Lapland people are?
Yes, and I also have some Laplander blood. I remember asking my cousin, do we have Laplander blood? And she said, we all do up north. I mean, that's where they are. So that's where they are. They're part of the circumpolar peoples. And
you are part reindeer.
I love reindeer. I've always loved it. It's delicious.
You should tell people I'm 1/16 reindeer.
With the red nose.
With the red nose. Well, let's move on here. We're kind of running down on time. I want to hit on Ansar. So is that your latest book, the one you're promoting now?
Yeah, that's the Ansar, the Progenitor. It's my fourth paranormal book. Like I talked about last time, I did these 3 timeless books, that trilogy, which documented 89 different paranormal experiences that I've had in my life. And the Ansar book focuses on a particular paranormal experience, in that this communication I've been having with this, what I describe as an ancient alien mystic. So I can, communicate when I do my spirit walks. I can do mediumship, and that's who I've been in communication with. And it's kind of a bizarre thing because, I was kind of reluctant to really talk about it too much. Even in the paranormal books, at first I just talked about ghosts and, more of the standard paranormal stuff, hauntings and telekinesis and telepathy and all that stuff. And then I got into the alien stuff. I started to let that out, and that was another leap, because you get a lot of people that'll say, I believe in ghosts and stuff, but aliens, no, that's crazy. So, but to me, it's all really part of the same realm, if you will. And I think they operate in the same, what's called the quantum, reality, instead of our, physical reality that we have here. They think they're all connected, ghosts, aliens, they're all in that quantum realm. And that's what connects them. So anyway, this book is about my experiences communicating with this ancient alien mystic. And I actually yesterday had contact with him. Every time I take a spirit walk, I connect with him, and he helps me understand things, kind of gives me heads up on what's coming up. And like, for instance, if you want me to share just briefly, he's been talking a lot about China And more so than what the headlines would have you believe, that it's actually much worse, the potential than even what we're being told. And so he kind of gives me a heads up to prepare. And I think that's what I try to do. When I talk about it, when I, on a show like this, or I post something on social media, it's funny. I get some people say, "Oh, thank you. It's good to, get different alternative viewpoints and from the spirit world or whatever, and from this ancient alien mystic." And other people are like criticizing me for being a fear monger and hate, or not a hate monger, but trying to spread fear and panic. And I always say, hey, I'm just trying to help. You can shoot the messenger if you want, but if I'm being told something that we need to prepare, it doesn't hurt to prepare.
Are you sure this isn't the ghost of Richard Nixon that you're tapping into?
Yeah, only Nixon could go to China, right?
That's right.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the ghost of Richard, but that's very funny, though.
Well, okay, give us a quick example. I mean, what sort of stuff is he saying about China? Like China's going to invade us, or?
No, not us. No, and it's the latest thing is actually kind of this gunboat diplomacy, which you can just imagine happening in the Taiwan Straits. You probably
the tensions are getting high between
Yeah. I mean, you're too young to remember the Taiwan Straits in the 50s with Eisenhower, and how we had to move our fleet in there and block them from, taking over Formosa or Taiwan then. And we did that. I think there was Quemoy and Matsu, or whatever the two islands were near Formosa, that they were hassling, and we had to intervene.
Right. But, Chiang Kai-shek was the main guy for Taiwan. Right.
Yes. Yeah. He escaped after that. When they went communist in '49. Yeah, he got pushed out, and so that's the mainland Chinese, or the government wants to reunite. But he's kind of telling me about these what he calls he didn't call it gunboat diplomacy, but basically that there's going to be a lot of naval activity in the Taiwan Straits, and that's a flashpoint for us, and we could, I don't think there's much we can do about it. The only thing we can do, and this is what Anzar's been telling me, he's reminded me that there is something that we used to have, and because I'm a historian, he likes to bring up, he tells me, he'll say, well, you've written about containment. That's probably what needs to happen. Containment is what we had in the Cold War, but we focused, on Russia, right? On the Soviet Union, actually.
Primarily.
And so containment is what you want to do short of war. Obviously, we don't want to have a war with China, nuclear or conventional or anything. Nobody wants that. So how do you contain them? You have to contain them. You have to present a defense that makes it well beyond, what they would consider tolerable. It's just too much of a risk to do anything. And to do that, we have to up the ante with Taiwan, and that's kind of what he's nudging me towards. It's unfortunate, and I think it's unfortunate we've come to this, but he's reminded me in history that this has happened before. We let things go too far with Japan in the 30s, and with obviously with Nazi Germany. There were certain points where we could have done something short of war, but then it came down to, what are you going to do?
Right.
It's already too late, and what he's reminding us is that there are options still. We don't have to wait and just see what happens. We can actually actively have something. He called it containment too, actually, which is kind of interesting. So, and I think we can learn something from what we did, 1947, 48, 49, before we went into the Korean War. Anyway, the originator of containment was a guy named George Kennan, who was a career diplomat, and he came up with the idea of containment. But I think there's so many issues, boiling and broiling there in Washington, D.C. I think that, I don't think they understand that China is the number one issue, and it's related to everything else.
Sure it is.
It is absolutely related to everything else. It should be number one, and that's what the message I'm getting is, and that's what I'm telling everybody who cares to ask me about it.
Well, unfortunately, and I'm just going to espouse a little bit of my opinion here, which it breaks my own rule, but I think it's worth saying. I don't think there's anybody in the administration, the current administration, who is even remotely fit to handle an international situation with China.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is capable. I don't think they have a clue. And that's why I'm guessing that China is testing the waters right now, because they know that. Now, I'm not going to get into we have to be strong and we have to all of this stuff and we have to puff our chest and saber rattle and do all of that. No, there's other ways to be diplomatic and yet draw a line, okay? But I don't think right now is the right administration, and I think if something is going to happen, it's going to happen sooner than later, before this administration changes. And the real test is, what are we going to be willing to do for Taiwan? They are an ally. We've always had real friendly relationships with them, but they could easily, maybe not quite as easily, but they could turn into a sort of a Hong Kong again. You know, when the lease was up and the British left Hong Kong, Hong Kong has been slowly being absorbed by the CCP. And I think similarly that would happen in Taiwan unless somebody draws a line somewhere. Obviously, it's going to have to be us, because I don't think that anyone else is going to come to their aid.
No, they won't. They will not. Yeah, I think you're right on. And I don't like to get political either. And it's really not a political discussion. It's just the reality. Do the people in charge now look like they have a handle on this? And I think anybody, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, you're going to say, it doesn't seem like this is on the front burner enough.
No.
Unless we're missing a lot. But I'll just share with you what my son, who works in the auto industry in Ohio, and they have a manufacturing plant in mainland China. They have literally almost cut off communication with them. Now, even though their supply, they have a relationship, and my son has actually been in China many times helping them with manufacturing processes, and because he's a mechanical engineer.
Oh.
And he said they don't even talk to them anymore. So it's like it's slowly severing the ties. And then he was talking about Taiwan, and he said Taiwan is a technological economic powerhouse. I mean, if mainland China was to get that to put into their prize bucket or whatever, my son said it would be a horrible setback for us competitively in the world in terms of technology, engineering, manufacturing, and all of that. Because Taiwan is like, they are like Japan. Incredibly sophisticated, technologically and manufacturing wise, and a very very educated, technically savvy populace too. So,
well, I've been to Taiwan a couple of times.
Oh, really? I've never been there, but they're just going by what my son told me.
Yeah, it's like Japan in that sense. I've been to Japan a couple of times, and I mean it's unbelievably technologically advanced. Just all kinds of stuff, from all of the sort of vending machines that are out on the streets that we could never have in this country because they would be destroyed and vandalized.
Exactly. But that's such a sad truth.
I mean, people are respectful of things like that in those countries because they have a strong culture and a strong history, and for better or for worse, it's a homogenous society, and a homogenous society is easier to keep together because you have similar interests and similar backgrounds. I just want to say this, and then we got to wrap it up. It's my feeling that China is vying to be the world dominant power, financial, militarily, all of the above. Okay.
Yep.
They are actively engaged in pursuing that. Currently, we are. But the big question comes to, are we willing to give that up, that place in the world? Are the American people that interested in maintaining that, or are we going to settle to be second? And then if it's yes or no, what are we willing to do to retain our status as number one? Are we going to go to war? Yeah. Are we going to lose hundreds of thousands of military lives for it? Or are we going to impose economic sanctions? Or are we simply going to roll over? And I think that's the question that needs to be asked on a national level. If you ask
Yep.
the average Joe, how important is it if America suddenly is the number 2 spot? How are they going to react? How is it going to affect their daily life?
No, you're exact, and it's the way I put it to my students. I say the last 2 hegemonic powers, the number 1 powers on earth, the last 2 have been English speaking and democracies.
Right.
One day I told them, you may wake up to a world where the number 1 hegemonic power in the world is not English speaking and is not a democracy. How is that going to change your everyday life? And you know it will. It'll change everybody's lives.
Better brush up on those Mandarin lessons.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we'll see. You know what? I just hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I hope not either. But it is it's interesting how they abandoned the communist economic model, adopted the capitalist one, but kept the communist political model.
Well, it's a hybrid. Yeah, it's a hybrid.
Yeah, it's a new thing. It's a hybrid, exactly. Yeah,
economically,
and they're trying to convince everybody it's better than the mess that we have. Through propaganda, obviously.
Well, I think in one sense,
they do.
In one sense, they are correct. In one sense, their society is orderly, it's controlled, and people do what they're told.
Yep.
Or they end up, in one of these. I interviewed a woman from there. She's fairly famous. Her name is Jennifer Zhang. She does a YouTube thing called The Inconvenient Truths. She was born and raised in mainland China. She was locked up in one of their re-education camps for 4 years, subject to electroshock therapy and all kinds of gruesome stuff.
No. Yeah.
Because she practiced a religion called Falun Gong, which the best way to describe it is like New Age Buddhism, and the CCP did not approve. And so because she was like the head of this thing, they locked her up. And she managed to escape, went to Australia, and now lives in the United States in New York, I think. So she came on the show. We were talking about, at the time she came on, we were talking about COVID. And that's a whole nother can of worms.
Sure. Also related to China.
Absolutely related to China. Yeah.
Yeah.
She did make points that it is a controlled society. You don't have the crime in the streets. You don't have people protesting. You don't have people vandalizing things. It is an orderly place, and everybody does what they're told. But she also made the comparison of ants and robots. And she says there isn't a lot of free will and thinking going on, that the government pretty much dictates what you can think, at least publicly think. I'm sure privately you can think whatever you want. It also stifles innovation. And I think that's one of the reasons why China is so keen to steal everybody's intellectual property when they come over there and try to do business, because they're not coming up with the stuff on their own. It takes that sort of free-thinking Western ideologies to come up with new ideas.
Yeah. No, I agree. That is that would be my assessment too. And I have Chinese students from mainland China, and I've noticed I've been teaching since '91, teaching history classes, college history, and I've noticed the Chinese students I have now, recently in the last 5-10 years, have been much less pro-democracy.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
they're here. And I actually had one who was very belligerent, actually, and he told me, he said, listen, I'm here to learn everything I can and take it back to my country so we can take over. I know he was boasting, but when you think about it, I thought, wow, okay, that's
you should have called INS on him. He would have been a dangerous terrorist.
I know he was in a community college history class, so I don't think he was one of their top agents, if he was. But you never know. You just send as many people over as you can, and like that. Who was that lady, Fang or whatever? She infiltrated, the ranks of politicians here in California, and and then now she fled the country, and so forth. She compromised a congressman or two.
Yeah, they've got 4 times the population that we do, in a geographic area that's about the same size.
Yeah. So
people are expendable as far as they're concerned. Human life is less valued over there. It's all about the chain and the prime directive, whatever Star Trek kind of words you want to use. It's really one focus with them.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary, because
the hive mind. Yeah.
The hive mind, right? The ant mentality, right? We're all here to work together to move that watermelon from your picnic to our hole. And you're only as good as the weakest link. And it's the collective mindset. Individualism is frowned upon. There's a great saying, I guess it's called. What do you want? A proverb, maybe, would be one. In the West, it's the early bird catches the worm. The one who's first that does something is the one who's okay. In the East, the nail that sticks up gets hammered in. And that's really the difference between the Eastern and the Western philosophy. And that holds true in a lot of Asian countries. That it's the collective mindset that, and this is one of the reasons why they're really lacking in innovation, because it's sort of frowned upon. You know, if somebody comes up with something different and has a different idea on something, it's generally frowned upon. So, why bother? Why bother to invent something?
It can be rather threatening, and it kind of reminds me of when corporations get too big. Oftentimes, creativity gets stifled because the most important thing and I've seen this having worked for a big corporation and in the defense industry, and it's if you try to be innovative, the first thing they do is say, no, that's just ridiculous. We have much more brilliant people than you working on these kind of things. And then if you do finally come up with something, then they just take it away from you.
Right. Well, you work for us. It's our idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for. I'm glad I thought of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the smart ones are the ones that quit before they tell them about the idea and go start their own startup company. Yeah.
And I saw that happen. I saw that. I can mention the company is Boeing.
Well, that makes sense.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. I can say it since I don't work for them anymore.
Well, we got to wrap this up, Bruce. You want to give out your website real quick?
Yeah, you can find out what I'm up to at bruceolavsolheim.com. Middle name spelled OLAV, Solheim, SOLHEIM.com, bruceolavsolheim.com. So you can see the comics, the paranormal books, the alien stuff, the music, the everything.
Great.
All the weird things I'm doing.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. It is. It's always fun. You never know what we're going to talk about. There's no script, so you just never know.
No script.
Which direction?
No script and no limits. All right. Take care, Bruce.
All right. You too.